What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now PS Edition. I am Alex. In this video, I want to discuss that Greg Miller has won again. Patapon 2 is real, or at least a new Patapon game in a way. Now, this is only a remaster, and let me tell you really fast my history with this before we get into the news, because the news is actually quite simple. Patapon, I only know existed in the first place, honestly, because of Greg Miller. Back in his time with Podcast Beyond, on IGN, obviously then moving to Kinda Funny. He's a guy that I've watched for a very, very long time. I respect him. I think he's an absolute awesome human being. And, Patapon is just such an important thing to him in his life. But honestly, that's where I first found out about this game. Now, I actually did play the first Patapon game, the remastered version, which came out in 2018. It's a very good game. I mean, Patapon is a very, very solid game. And it's just good to see. It's good to see this franchise returning after a couple years off, and also the fact that we still haven't gotten a brand new, built from the ground up, absolute new missions and stuff like that. We haven't gotten a new Patapon in a very, very long time. But what I like about this, honestly, what this means for Greg Miller in general, is Sony, in a way, they do listen, right? And I think it's great that a company does have this kind of, firstly, fan base that's willing to get behind a guy like Greg Miller to basically demand a game like Patapon to either have a new game or to have a remaster, and to have it actually come out. In a way, and I have seen this before in different articles, like, you need Greg to be able to promote your favorite game. So if you're in my camp, I want a new Sly Cooper game. He needs to start the petition, and he needs to be the loudest voice for that in order for that to happen. If we want Resistance to come back, he's the number one guy. So honestly, I mean, Patapon is in a large scale of things, it's very, very small. It's almost non-consequential at all. But again, it does show that Sony is willing to listen. Sony is willing to say, hey, we have obviously this figurehead, and they know who Greg is, obviously, and we have this community behind him, and they really want this. But honestly, more than that, what this means for like Patapon's future is there honestly can be one, right? I say this all the time, in that these remasters, these remakes, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the same thing for this. Normally, I would say that if you remaster or remake a game, a lot of times it's to gauge interest, right? Gauge if people still want it, know if there's still a fan base out there, when kind of going through like, okay, could we make a brand new installment in this game? Could we bring the franchise back? It's a good, I've seen a lot of people say pulse test. It's a great pulse test. Again, I've been saying that for Sly, Resistance, you could do so many different things. The Crash Insane trilogy, Crash Team Racing, Spyro Reignited trilogy, all of these games are very clearly designed to see if people still care about the franchise, care about the property in the respective year that they released, to see if, hey, maybe we can make a brand new game. Now, the reason I say it could be different is with Patapon, it did have Greg Miller, and it did have a large voice in that respect, very large voice, and again, the people behind him. So I feel like some of it could honestly just be to say, like, okay, we'll give you one. It also it's like brownie points. It looks good on Sony that say, hey, we have this guy who a lot of people look to, and he doesn't necessarily have to be, but a lot of people look to Greg as like he's like the head, he's like a key player in like the PlayStation community on like the ground level, right? YouTube, just the internet in general, like he to a lot of people, he reflects and represents their voices, right? So he's an important person, and to kind of give him one and to give the community behind him one, it's like, okay, we are lit. So in a way, that is honestly, I think, a large part of what they were doing here, is saying like, hey, we do listen. If you guys do speak up enough, if you guys do want something, we'll give it to you. Also, provided that you buy it. Like, if this game sold, say, 10 copies when it came out, I mean, obviously Sony would be disgusted and upset, but I really think this is actually going to sell rather well. It's only going to be $15, and it comes out this Thursday, so this is very, very close. Let me know also, I know this is like in the middle of the video, let me know if you want me to cover this game in particular. Maybe I can make a video or two about it when it releases on Thursday. But so it could be a brownie point thing, saying like, hey, we listen to you. It could also be because they say, hey, these kind of games have, this kind of rhythm action kind of game. Like, Sound Shapes isn't like Patapon, but it's in the same family. Sound Shapes did extremely well. These kind of games have a market. These kind of games are not dead, and they can be very, very popular and very, like, productive in terms of they can sell, they can make people money. So it could also be just forward thinking from Sony, being like, hey, stagnant franchise, we remastered the first one a few years ago, time to do the second one. Let's see if people, again, still still care, and then maybe we can consider like continuing it or adding things or adding a brand new game. Could very well. I think again, it's like both. I think some of it is a pulse test, see if people still want it, in the way that it's a low risk, low reward, right? You're giving people what they want. You're gonna make people happy. If it sells well, then that's just icing on top of the cake. So like that's great. And then if it does, then maybe you allow a smaller studio to make a brand new Patapon game, and you see if that does well. But again, it's not. This is a the Rhythm kind of game franchises, they're still around, and they still can be popular under the right circumstances. And one exclusive in this way to PlayStation, in a way, gives it a leg up because you have that community behind it. So overall, I think just a really cool thing. Greg Miller has been asking for it literally forever. The community behind him has been asking it forever. I actually enjoy Patapon. Again, I honestly wouldn't know that this franchise existed without him, and I think honestly a lot of people are in the same way. Colin and Greg, for a lot of these smaller niche games, from PSP to PS Vita to PS3, all these kind of things that we kind of grew up listening to podcasts beyond with, especially them, there's a lot of games out there that I feel like they definitely upgraded how popular it would have been without them. A lot of including Patapon. Without Greg, Patapon honestly would not be, I think, a thing at all. You could argue, if you're being dead serious, is Patapon really a thing in general? Not necessarily, but it is what it is, solely, in my opinion, because of Greg Miller. So, guys, let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Are you excited for Patapon 2? Or are you going to be getting Patapon 2 Remastered this Thursday? Again, let me know if you want me to make specific videos on Patapon 2. And if there is interest, I'll absolutely do it. So, thank you all so much for watching. New videos every single day, and I hope to see you guys there.